thanks to technology, people have fewer novel experiences today than they did in the past.
You're sitting in a chair in the sky.
It's easy to do the same thing every day.
I bet there was a lot of anxiety as it flew away. Like, there's grizzly bears out here.
Especially when the plane leaves and like you're the only one. You're just standing there and there's like giant grizzly
Poop
everywhere. just going.
Boy, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Bill Morgan, president of Parker University, and today I'm with Michael Easter, the author of The Comfort Crisis. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We really enjoyed your talk, and you had a lot to say about the comfort crisis, and it really came to three big categories. Become a 2%er was one, and the second one was
Embrace boredom.
Embrace boredom.
Embrace boredom in a world where we spend 12 hours a day on screens.
And then do big things, the Misogi Principle. So can you talk a little bit about what you offer, what you've observed as an observer of human behavior?
Yeah, I think big picture, my work looks at, especially in the comfort crisis, how as the world has become more comfortable over time, especially in the last 100 years with the rise of technology where we have escalators and delivery food and we live at 72 degrees and we communicate with others through screens. Those advances are great. They're part of progress, but it's also removed us from experiences and things that keep us healthy. And those things are often uncomfortable. So when you shift people who are basically wired to do the next easiest thing, because evolution very much made us that way, and put us in an easy environment, we're just programmed to do the easy thing, and yet it is the hard thing that keeps us healthy, keeps us engaged, and also I would argue gives us meaning and improves even mental health outcomes.
So we always seem to seek the easy path. It's in our DNA. It's part of our survival mechanism. Why waste energy if you're Aboriginal man? You want to save that energy for when you need it. But when you're living as an Aboriginal man, as you've done, to survive takes extreme effort every day.
Yeah. Exactly. And so in that context, yeah, you don't want to move any more than you have to. Like exercise, big picture is kind of something that we invented after the Industrial Revolution, where all of a sudden now you have people standing, at an assembly line all day or sitting behind a desk. We start to notice, well, wait a minute, these people that sit all day, they seem to have worse health outcomes than the people who are still moving around. Well, maybe we should get these people who sit to just move around for the sake of it, right? And that's how exercise comes about. And it still helps us, of course, but it's just this big shift that as technology changes and makes things easier and less effortful, we lose something. And so then the question is like, okay, well, how do we insert these sort of fundamental forms of discomfort back into our life in a way that is, reasonable for a person living in the modern age? Because, I'm not arguing at all that anyone, go back to living like Aboriginal man at all. But the question is, what lessons does that hold?
But what we find is we're very comfortable. And I think you were very good at expressing how awesome it is to live right now. There was somebody complaining about the service at an airplane. And a friend of mine, who's actually here at the conference is, like, you're sitting in a chair in the sky. Put this in perspective for how many millions of years people have been afoot. You're sitting and you're complaining about how, the service. So the biohackers are taking bits of what you're talking about. Cold, we'll do a cold plunge, exposure to heat. We'll get heat shock proteins if we expose to saunas. We'll do exercise to create this response. So we've taken bits and pieces of it, and in our society, we're trying to reintroduce these hard things as part of our daily life. But what you're talking about is going out for a month at a time and really expose yourself to, as I said, Aboriginal living, to do hard things.
Yeah. And I think, there's ways to integrate this into like a day-to-day life. I think a lot of times when we think about studies, there's so many confounding variables that we're aware of that we're not aware of, right? And so I think sometimes when we lean too far into, it was this specific mechanism, it's like, well, there could be 50 other things that we're just not aware of, right? But I do think that sort of big picture, we can look at human past can inform the present in a lot of ways. So if a person is going to exercise, it's like, amazing, exercise. Now can we take it outdoors, right? Now can we put it on varied terrain? Like, how can we insert all these things that might cover these confounding variables that may be skewing the data? And I think that generally that can just give people more.
So as I'm reading your book, your first book, you talk about training for Alaska by going out into the desert in Las Vegas to train. How did that prepare you, or did it at all?
It helped, but the reality is you cannot truly prepare yourself because there's just there's so much happening. Two, if I were to hike the amount we hiked, all I would do is hike, right? I wouldn't have a job. So no, you can't really prepare yourself fully, but you can do something that will help you out there and put you so you're not at an extreme deficit when you get out there.
So when you talk about Misogi, you say pick something that you have like a 50-50 chance you're not going to be able to do it. That's pretty intense, and that could be dangerous, especially if you're hiking the Grand Canyon or something like that. I think that was even one of your examples in your book, was somebody who was trying to hike the Grand Canyon. People die there every year, so if you can't make it, that's how do you rectify that?
I mean, I generally, when people come to me and ask questions, I'm like, what safety levers do we have here? Let's make sure we get as many safety levers as possible. We want things to be slightly uncontrolled because that's where the magic happens. You want to feel like you're a little bit out of control, right? But at the same time, things need to be generally in control. So if it's something like the Grand Canyon, I mean, if someone goes, okay, I want to hike from rim to rim in a day. It's like, okay, well, which trails are you hiking? Because there's some in the Grand Canyon that are super remote. You're never going to see anyone if you fall. And there's some that there's people everywhere. There's water along the way, like, let's maybe try that one to start. Yeah.
You might still have a 50% chance of making it, but you have a lot higher chance of not dying.
Exactly.
That's number one rule I think you said, was don't die.
Don't die, yeah.
Yes, especially after hearing your talk. We don't want you coming back and saying, I heard this at Parker seminars.
Yes, exactly.
With it, and we're talking about longevity. As we get older and we seek comfort, how is that going to affect our ability to live those 20 more good years, to be resilient? Because we need to be resilient, and you don't get resilience from sitting in air-conditioned comfort in our easy chair.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, as you well know, I think that movement is one of the best levers as someone ages. But even within the space of exercise, people can get comfortable, right? It's, okay, well, I exercise, but I only run or I only lift weights or whatever it is. And I think even getting outside your comfort zone in the zone of movement, where it's like, well, I hate lifting weights, but guess what? I'm going to do it because I know it's good for me. And so thinking of like, what are all the different ways I can be moving my body? And even emotionally, and this, maybe isn't as, I think this applies to all age groups, but, having hard conversations with people, being vulnerable in your relationships and things like that. I think that sort of opens up avenues of resilience as well. There's just so many different ways that this can be interpreted, and I think that all of them lead to something of a benefit.
Well, to create change, there must be friction. And we talk about our neurocenter, and we create friction. I went a 2-week intense course up there about a month ago. It's very stimulating, very exhausting, but it's just like when you lift weights. If you want to build muscles, you actually have to build inefficiencies, because you don't naturally get hypertrophy of your muscles. You actually have to put yourself in a place that puts you at a disadvantage, create that friction to create hypertrophy.
Yeah.
So same thing for exercise. If you wanted to get a tan, if you laid out for 15 minutes every day, initially you would develop a tan that would protect you for 15 minutes. But if you could lay out there every day for a year, you won't get any more tan because you've already established enough melanin to protect you for 15 minutes in the sun. You'd have to go for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You have to go longer to develop that. Same with weights or running. You have to vary it. Otherwise, you just become adapted.
Yeah. And I think there's also a good lesson in there in terms of if someone, the first time they go out to tan, they go, I'm going to do 2 hours. It's like, well, now you're going to get a sunburn, right? So I think there's a good lesson that, waiting out slowly, but sort of continuously pushing that edge over time. Something we don't necessarily like to do and aren't wired to do, but I do feel like that's sort of the necessary thing that needs to happen for all change.
Are you familiar with the term hormesis?
Yeah.
So it goes back to the ancient Greek king who was using poison, trying small amounts of poison, so he became immune to their effects. So if we expose you to too much heat, it causes damage. But if you give enough heat, it has a therapeutic value. Too much cold, it can cause damage. A small amount of cold has a therapeutic value. It makes you more resilient. So that takes place in exercise is the same way. Too much exercise, you get rhabdo, and you get liver damage or kidney damage. So with it, there's this fine line. It sounds like the large things you do are past that fine line, though. Do you find that you're like pushing it the level too far when you went to the Arctic?
I would say I probably had enough levers in that I felt like it was absolutely hard. I felt like at certain times, like we had some weather that was just, you're like, oh, I hate this, right? At the same time, though, I think that the way technology has shifted life, it's easy to do the same thing every day. When you start doing the same thing every day, all of a sudden it's like you're just kind of repeating the movie. You find yourself just kind of not really paying attention to life. And so I also think that there's a psychological benefit to just doing things that are totally new. And that was totally new to me. Right? And it's just like, this is like not scientific, but like, let's just call it, you feel like you're alive, and that really, I think I found that out there too, because it was just, everything was so new and you have to be engaged. You have to do these things that are going to help you survive out there. And it's just a very life-giving, right? In the moment you're freaked out, but then afterwards you're like, yeah, that's.
One thing we do know for brain health is novel experiences and travel. If we wanted to really stimulate neuroplasticity in your brain, I could drop you off in Cairo, Egypt, someplace you might not know the language, in the back streets. How do I navigate here? How's the money work? How do I get back to my hotel or that? It's going to hyper-stimulate your neuroplastic changes. It's going to affect you, as opposed to if you just hang out here in Dallas or Las Vegas where you live. So what do you know about travel and how that increases your ability to adapt?
So I think like big picture navigation, like navigation is a feature of all brains, right? Every creature evolved to figure out how to get from point A to point B. The interesting thing is that some animals have, for example, like magnetite in their body. And so they have this sort of internal compass. Humans, we don't have any of that, right? Like, and sometimes one leg is slightly shorter than the other. Like if you just plop a human somewhere, it's just, okay, I think I'm going the right direction. And they end up exactly where they started. So humans, we had to pay attention. Right, and we would pay attention to how the land changed. We would use features for navigation. We had literally stories and songs that were passed down generation to generation to get from point A to point B, but it all focused on paying attention to the outside world and using that to figure out your way in the world. And I think if you think of the rise of technology today, we've sort of offloaded that to a blue dot. So there's this one person that I talked about, and she's a navigation expert. I talked to her, and she called it blue dot thinking. So if you think about how people navigate today, they pull out Google Maps, and they go, oh, this blue dot, that's where I am. You don't really know where you are, though. And so I think if you can put people in a different environment where you do have to use environmental cues to navigate, I think that does good things for the brain. And there's some really interesting studies on London cab drivers.
Oh, yes.
Who don't use GPS, and they have different, I forget the exact reasons because I'm not a neuroscientist, but they have stronger brain development, I think in the hippocampus.
Yeah, that's larger than the average person.
Yeah.
But it shrinks after they stop, if they stop it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think today there's some evidence that suggests that because we've offloaded navigation, which is this thing humans did forever, to the cloud, as it were, or we just don't go into new places, I think that there's some evidence of deleterious effects because of that.
You're exactly right, I think, and it's a good idea. A lot of people we recommend do this is turn off that and just get lost.
Yeah, get lost. Have to figure out your way.
Even if it's in your car, get lost.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is you can take this very far. So I would argue that thanks to technology, people have fewer truly novel experiences today than they did in the past. And I'll give you a stupid example that everyone can use. So when you think about before someone goes to a restaurant anymore, what do? We got to check out the website. I got to read the menu because I need to know what to order. Also, I have to go onto yelp.com and I have to read the reviews and I got to look at the photos. Like, that experience is not as novel as it could have been because you've done all this prior research. Right? And so I do think that there's a benefit to just going into places totally cold without having done all this research and letting that truly be a novel experience.
There's two sides to that. Like if you're going to go on a vacation and you're eagerly anticipating it and you're thinking about it before it goes, And when you do go there, you're going to get a lot bigger dopamine release when you really experience it as you anticipate it. That doesn't mean you're actually maybe uncovered it, because let's say I'm going to Greek Isles.
Yeah.
Excited about that. I don't even know what to do there. Maybe I'll try to plan my trip, but as you get there, if I'm anticipating it, if you really think about it, it's going to magnify the joy of that trip. Where if you're like, man, you head down and you just know there's a vacation coming, and you don't even think about it till you show up, you're going to get that novel experience, but you're not going to get as much dopamine out of that.
I would say that might happen in the run up to the vacation. Yeah. Here's a great study. There was this analysis of people who are going to clubs in London. So nightclubs.
Okay, nightclubs.
And clubs are all trying to figure out what kind of crazy things can we do to make people have the most epic night possible. Are we going to throw bubbles and foam? And what if we get the better DJ? What if we get this and that and that? So they polled people, what was the best part of the night? The best part of the night for everyone was getting ready with their friends for the club.
Eager anticipation.
Yeah, eager anticipation. Yeah, so that became like the best part, but it wasn't the night itself. It makes me wonder, like, how does that get modulated with you if you're so looking forward, and then you get there and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe it doesn't become quite as intense and novel. I don't know.
But well, there is that something about preparing for it. Like when you were getting ready to go to Alaska in the Arctic Circle, getting your kit together, I bet there was a lot of excitement with that.
Yeah, for sure. There absolutely was.
And when that plane dropped you off, and I remember reading about it in your book, I bet there was a lot of anxiety as it flew away. Like, there's grizzly bears out here.
Yeah, especially when the plane leaves and like you're the only one there, and you're waiting. And you're waiting for someone else to get.
Oh, that's right. You were by yourself. They had to make 2 trips.
Yeah, you're just standing there, and there's giant grizzly poop everywhere. So you're just going, okay, so we're alone out here, and you
didn't have your rifle at that point.
No, I didn't.
Had you hunted before?
I hadn't. That was the first time I hunted. Was there? Yeah, I had gone on hunts, but I hadn't actually hunted.
Are you a hunter now?
I'm a hunter now, yeah. And that it definitely changed. It changed me more than I would have anticipated.
In my 60s, before I hunted ever, and I've enjoyed shooting, but I've noticed it's I think you talked about spiritual. It's ethical. It's spiritual. There's so many levels to it, but it's like that was a lot more satisfying and maybe primeval type satisfaction than I expected.
I agree.
Because I didn't see myself as a hunter ever.
Yeah. And then you end up eating the meat later, and it's like kind of takes you back to that moment. And there definitely is something to that.
Is it something that's in you? That's in all of us? Hunter-gatherers?
I mean, the way I would answer that question is that if we didn't have grocery stores, we'd all be hunter-gatherers. And we were forever, So, I mean, foraging is absolutely... Hunting and foraging, I think, that act explains why today people spend so much time on Amazon looking for the next bargain. It's the exact same act. You're foraging. Or on social media, you're foraging for the thing that's going to give you that.
Boy, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's maybe how they're playing the neurology on us. As you called the iPhones, or the mobile phones rather, you called them slot machines.
Slot machines.
They are slot machines. They activate the same neurology as when you're playing a game of chance.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Go back to wilderness experiences. I remember when I went through Alaska, this is back in 1976. We got put up there 6 weeks in the Arctic Circle. We went a week without food, with any food.
Oh, wow.
And rose hips. All sticking out of the snow in the tundra. Did they have that? Did you see that when you're there? These little rose hips. That's all we had to eat for a week. Wow. For the next 50 years, I could be in a forest of rose hips. It's like my peripheral vision will pick them out. And there's a few other edibles that we had there. But even these many years later, 50 years later, it's the thing that pops up. If I'm in a wilderness any place, I see.
That's amazing.
It comes back. Oh yeah, that's right.
That's amazing.
From what you know, and you're come from a writing background, more than a science background.
Yep.
Bringing this back to the neurology and the longevity, what take-home messages do you have for us about what you've done with your work to extend the good years and the more productive years of life?
I would go back to the 2% idea I talked about in the talk. Yeah, so the idea of 2%, it comes from a stat that found that 2% of people take the stairs when there's also an escalator available. Only 2% of people. And yet 100% of people know the stairs are going to give them They're going to be better for their health. It's going to give them a long-term return on their health, their mental well-being even. But we're wired to do the easy thing. And that backfires in a world where we can constantly do the easy thing. And so I think to me, what I like about it is it's so approachable for people. It's, okay, could I take this phone call while walking around? Oh, there's a staircase there, I'll take that. And it may seem small, but I guarantee that if a person starts taking the staircase when they're 50, they have a higher probability of continuing to take the staircase when they're 90, right? It's like those little things really add up. And we often, when it comes to movement in particular, we think like, this is my exercise time. It's this truncated 30 minutes. And then the rest of the time, we're taking the escalator. It's like, you can build so much momentum and just volume by just trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this a little harder? If I can just add more movement back into my day, if I can figure out ways, how am I going to spend my time beyond just screens? I think there's a lot there, and I think it can be very easy.
We talked a little bit about idiomatic language earlier too, about how easy that is to have that superficial conversations. But you also said it's important to be vulnerable in your relationships, and you don't get to that level, that higher level, unless you have true communication.
Right.
As a writer, you go out of your way to express words. And you see people who become lazy with their talk. And actually, I try to force myself to have meaningful conversations at this age because I know it's easy to slip into the superficial conversations, so easy as we age.
I would just, I think, go back to, changing your life for the better, whether it's getting those extra 20 years or just making your life right now better. I think it does involve taking on challenges, being willing to try things and fail, stepping outside of your comfort zone. And I would also say, thanks for having me. This was a really great event.
Well,
I really enjoyed my time here.
I felt like I know you from reading your book, and I can't look forward to reading your next book.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Michael Easter, author of the best-selling book, The Comfort Crisis, and this is Parker University.